A letter to my son on relationships. One night during the summer of 2000, while living at the family cottage on Grand Lake, I was having trouble sleeping. I began to think about the paper I needed to write for a psychology course I was taking through the internet. As I quietly lay there organizing my thoughts, they turned to the time I was a United States Air Force instructor pilot in the Cessna T-37 primary jet trainer at Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas in the early 1970s. Eventually I drifted off to sleep. Then, so far as always has happened, I woke up and started my day. After dressing, starting my computer and coffee, I wrote the following email to my older son. Dear son, here are some of my thoughts on relationships, which occurred to me last night and I wanted to share them with you. Looking back and thinking about it, a good pilot needs a very close relationship with his aircraft. The T-37 I flew was affectionately referred to as the 2,000-pound dog whistle or the Tweety bird, shortened to Tweet. After living with her for over 4 years, I got to know her pretty well and we depended on each other for our lives. The Tweet had a very consistent personality. If you took care of her, fed her jet fuel, kept all her fluid levels full and clean, didn't try to do things she was not designed to do, and stayed out of thunderstorms, she would perform all day, every day, and virtually never let you down. Because a pilot's life depends on how he gets along with his aircraft, he learned all there was to know about her. In return, she also gave you plenty of straightforward, timely feedback when needed. The instruments told you where you were in the sky, how fast you were going, and, if she was not feeling up to par that mission, warned you to head for home. Not once on any of my flights did my little Tweety bird ever let me down. And, for the most part, after I learned to fly, I didn't let her down either. It's too bad that I had to be out of her cockpit for over 26 years to really begin to understand and appreciate the relationship we had. The communication between aircraft and pilot is rather intimate. First of all, the Air Force required you to learn all there was to know about her systems and capabilities. The book on the Tweet is called the T-37B-1. It gave you the facts on all her systems, structure, engines, skin, flight controls, instruments, flight characteristics, speed and altitude limitations, and how to get out of her safely if something serious failed. Nothing was left to chance. If the Air Force learned something new about her personality, we were the first to hear about it. In turn, all that she asked of us was to treat her right and bring her safely home. We certainly asked more of her than she did of us. When you first started to fly the Tweet in pilot training, you were so far behind her you wondered if you would ever catch up. I remember the first time I taxied out on the runway for takeoff, pushing her throttles to 100% power, and as she lifted off, it seemed my mind was still sitting there on the runway waiting for her to start moving. Eventually, after several months and lots of time spent in her cockpit with hours and hours of practice, my thoughts were several miles ahead of where my brain was physically in the air. The faster she flew, the further ahead I had to think. That was my first understanding of what thinking proactively meant. Eventually I got to know the Tweet so well from the feedback she gave that I could fly her almost by the sounds and vibrations she sent to me. I could literally move the throttles to a sound level for the particular flight maneuver I wanted, then look at the instrument gauges for confirmation. Most of this was done by the sound she sent me from her engines. No, there wasn't one thing about her nature I didn't know. There were times in the beginning when I would horse her throttles and stick around in frustration trying to get her to turn tighter or respond faster, only to have her start to stall. I soon learned that my frustration would only get us in trouble, so I changed my behavior. I had tried to change hers and found that impossible. She would let you know when you were going too slow, too fast, turning too tight or not tight enough. Of course, we both knew our lives depended on each other, and if either of us let the other down, it could be all over. Therefore, you were always in constant communication. To do this, there had to be a good foundation of understanding between us. Fortunately for her pilots, the Tweet didn't change very much, so it was we flyers who had to adapt and change to her. She was a very forgiving bird to her student pilots. She let them make many mistakes and would usually recover, or left it up to the instructors to save everyone's life. Oh, what a beautiful relationship we had. The Tweet and I took many long rides together, bored lots of holes through clouds, and always returned. It's too bad that each of us doesn't come into the world with a complete -1, to let those who are going to have a relationship with them learn what makes them tick. But then, most people would not take the time to read it. The other side of the coin is that everyone needs to read and understand their own -1. Since pilots cannot change their aircraft's behavior, they should at least understand their own so that it will work in harmony with the aircraft in which they are strapped. This must be where my thoughts were going last evening. If I am going to improve my relationship with myself and others, I need to invest time reading, learning, and developing my own -1. Once I've done that, I can identify those items in it that need to be removed, replaced, and/or modified. So, I guess it's time for me to start reading, learning, reflecting, and changing. Love, Dad.
Got some power. RPM's rising. Adding that power back in. I like the control so far. I feel like I've got lighting looks good. Alright. Center line, altimeter set, flaps are set, landing lights on, strobe lights on. Let's do this. Let's go push through the firewall. No. 40 to 100 knots. 120. Oh, looks like we got gone up a lot faster than 120. You're coming up. Climbing through 140, flaps coming up. Beautiful. Steady yet responsive. Heat blur looks great. There's a screamer. About 250 knots. Like I said, easiest way to describe this one is stable, but very responsive. Great field of view. This thing's cool, you guys. Scare some of the cars, even though I don't have traffic turned on. Ooh. Frame rate is excellent. See how fast she bleeds airspeed. Yep, pulling G's, we're dropping airspeed like crazy. That's pretty good. physics seem to be on par. Holding a little bit better than I would have anticipated, but it's also a very small aircraft, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. This thing rips it, dude. Power back into the wall again. Coming up on 300 knots.
Fall in the fucking sky.
Passing through 9,000. It's like approaching our stall. There's the stall. And just rolls over on its nose and comes back. Pull that power back out. This is a really, really cool airplane, you guys. I am thoroughly impressed with this thing. And it seems very, very well modeled. As far as I could tell while I was taxiing, I was playing around with various buttons, switches, etc. And it seems like just about almost everything is modeled. There's a few things that aren't, but it seems like just about everything is there.